Okay, so a family has left Bethlehem to go to Moab because of a famine. And while there, all the original family members pass away except one, and that's Naomi. And so Naomi remains along with her two daughters-in-law, Ruth and Orpah. I am reading chapter 1 of Ruth, starting at verse 6. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law to return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the fields of Moab that the Lord had visited his people and given them food. So she set out from the place where she was with her two daughters-in-law, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, "Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband." Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb, that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say, I have hope, even if I should have a husband this night and should bear sons, would you therefore wait till they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it's exceedingly bitter to me for your sake that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me." Then they lifted up their voices and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. And she said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." But Ruth said, "Don't urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you." And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more. Wonderful story. Story of Ruth. The argument that Naomi has with Ruth and Orpah is actually very strange. In fact, I think it's very rare. Usually a person argues to get what's best for herself, right? The teenager argues with the parent because she thinks that buying that particular piece of clothing is best for her, no matter what the price. The worker argues with a fellow worker because he's trying to do less work. But in contrast, Naomi is arguing for what she thinks is best for her daughters-in-law and definitely worse for her. In the same way, Ruth and Orpah, they're arguing for what's best for their mother-in-law, Naomi, and what's not best for themselves. For Naomi, it would be best if Ruth and Orpah accompanied her because they could help her out in her old age. And they are the only hope of having the family line continue. For Ruth and Orpah, it would be best if they went back to Moab because there they could find husbands and they wouldn't have this old woman hanging around on their necks, right? So for them it's best to go back, but no, they say we're going to return with you. This behavior is called hesed in the Old Testament. Hesed has two elements to it. It refers to loyalty and it refers to love. The three women are showing loyalty to one another. Naomi is loyal to the best interests of Ruth and Orpah, and Ruth and Orpah are loyal back to Naomi in that they want to accompany her. They don't want to leave her. But the word also has this sense of love. And they three of them all love each other a lot. In fact, The very thought of leaving each other causes them to cry and to weep and to kiss each other and to hug each other. So they love each other a lot. And Hesed, usually one of these features is dominant. Either the loving is dominant, in which case it's loyal love, or the loyalty is dominant, in which case it's loving loyalty, which would be the way you translate it. In this case, loyalty is definitely in the foreground, but love is there as well. And you'll note that Yahweh, the Lord, God himself, shows Hesed to people. It's a characteristic of God. In verse 8 it says, may Yahweh deal kindly. That's our word, Hesed. May he show loving loyalty to you. Naomi prays that Yahweh will show this to Ruth and Orpah. And the way God can do this is by providing husbands for both Ruth and Orpah. So at the end of the story, when Ruth finally marries Boaz, because Naomi has made this prayer, we know who's accomplished this. It's the Lord. That marriage is from God himself, and he deserves the glory. Additionally, notice that Ruth and Orpah show Hesed to Naomi and her two sons, Mahlon and Chilion. It says in that verse, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. They had shown this loving loyalty to their husbands and to their mother-in-law. They weren't fair-weather friends, here today, gone tomorrow. And even when their husbands died, they did not abandon Naomi. They stayed loyal to her. They stayed with her. And lastly, I want you to notice in that verse the word as, which is really important. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and me. There's a notion here of you get what you deserve. If you show loyalty and kindness, you deserve to experience the same back. Loyalty and kindness. Perhaps you've heard the sentence that says, for whatever one sows, that he will also reap. It's found in Galatians chapter 6, verse 7. If you sow Hesed, you will reap Hesed. Ruth and Orpah have shown this loyal love, and so the prayer is that God will reap loyal love to Ruth and Orpah in the form of husbands and a new marriage. Now, it's not guaranteed. This general principle is not guaranteed. It's not an absolute, and that's why Naomi prays for it. If it was an absolute, you wouldn't need to pray for it because it was going to happen anyway, right? This concept can also be described in reward or wages language. So in Ruth chapter 2, verse 11, Boaz addresses Ruth and he says, all that you've done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land and came to a people that you did not know before. And here it is. The Lord repay you for what you have done. This is that concept. You sow what you reap. And a full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you've come to take refuge. See, there's that reward language. You should be rewarded because you have shown this Hesed, this loving loyalty. Think about society. Wouldn't society be so different if people functioned with this Hesed, this loving loyalty, or this loyal love? Imagine people arguing over not what's best for number one, but what's best for the other person. Wouldn't that be something? What about in the church? Wouldn't it be a better place if members functioned like this in terms of being loyal and loving and wanting what's best for the other person, not what's best for themselves? And what if this love, loyalty became paramount again in business? Consumers wouldn't be looked upon as just a pocket, a wallet or a purse that I can get money from, right? They'd actually be looked upon as human beings to whom I should be honest and I should show love. Employers would be faithful to the employees, not quick to lay them off. Employees would be faithful to their employers in that they would work hard for them, knowing that if the employer is successful, they're successful too. A lot of this is gone from our society, disappeared. You've heard of the gig economy? Right, yeah. Lots of millennials are part of this gig economy where you sign up for a contract. Your contract is for 1 year, you work for them for a year, and guess what? A lot of times you're gone after that year. See, it's not there anymore, that loyalty. And so is the millennial that concerned about his employer? Not really. Because he could be gone at the end of the contract. So this hesed is disappearing from society. Very much so. Through her argumentation, Naomi manages to convince Orpah to turn around and head back to Moab. Now this was no easy decision, for she knows that she'll probably never see Naomi again. The decision must have just tugged at the strings of her heart. It was a very difficult thing to do. Now Orpah's not doing anything wrong by heading back to Moab. In fact, she's being obedient to her mother-in-law, right? Naomi. It's Naomi who's telling her to go back, and she's being obedient. She's not doing anything wrong. She's choosing between two good options, right? Stay with mother-in-law and go to Israel, or go back to Moab. And she decides to go back to Moab. It's no different from when you're in the grocery store and you choose one carrot over a different bunch of carrots, right? Those are two good options. Or you buy one car and you decide not to buy the others. Those are good options. Sometimes we have that in life. We have good options. Now, Orpah's decision, even though it's not a bad decision, it's a good decision, has the effect, though, of making Ruth's decision to stay something magnificent. Orpah's like a foil. It's an opposite to Ruth. And it makes her decision so much grander. I mean, Ruth clings tightly to Naomi. Picture it as her hugging Naomi and I'm not letting go. I'm staying with you. She's felt the pangs of loss when Mahlon, her husband, died, and she is not going to feel it again with the loss of Naomi. And as I pointed out before in Genesis, when the patriarchs headed to a country because of a famine, they usually emerged from that country later on wealthier than before they went in. And the same thing is happening here in the story. Naomi she doesn't see what's going on. She's blind to it. As far as she can see, she's lost 2 sons and a husband. Right? And she's heading back with a daughter-in-law. That's not a blood relation, okay? That's an in-law. So, losing 3, gaining 1, how am I wealthier? But she is wealthier. She's much more wealthier. Because you see, even though she's not cognizant of the wealth that she's taking back to Israel, the women of Bethlehem are cognizant of it. And they say at the end of the story, they say, "For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons." Naomi's going back, not just with 1 Ruth, but with more than 7 sons. That's how truly magnificent is the hesed that Ruth is showing towards her mother-in-law, Naomi. Now Ruth is still clinging tightly to her mother-in-law, and she demands, "Don't put pressure on me to leave you or to return to Moab. My heart is dedicated to following you wherever you go. If you stay in this small town, I'll stay with you. If you travel to that small town, I'll be there with you. If you sleep in this hotel, I'm going to sleep with you in this hotel. And if you go back to your people are going to become my people. And your God is going to become my God. And I totally abandoned my own people. I renounced Chemosh, the god of the Moabites. And I am very serious. I am so serious that wherever you die, I will die. and I will be buried beside you, according to the customs of the Israelites. And then she makes this oath. I solemnly swear by your God and my God that if I don't keep this path, then may he do this to me and worse. She doesn't specify the this. Now Ruth is very cognizant that she's heading in a new direction. Gone are her family. Gone are the familiar surroundings and the sights. Gone are the accustomed religious rituals. Instead now, she's got insecurity, uncertainty, precariousness. How would the people of Bethlehem respond to her? Would they accept her? Would they be able to find food? And most importantly, would she be able to find a husband there? If you've ever moved to unfamiliar places, you know something of the apprehensions that Ruth is feeling. You feel like you're adrift on the sea. The waves lift you up and they drop you down, and there's no one there to take you into a boat. Your body is somewhat numb, but all around you, all you can see is just water. You feel lost, abandoned, adrift. And this is something of what Ruth is feeling. Now, one thing Ruth has now that's inside the commitment that she makes to Naomi is a commitment to the God of the Israelites. Your God will be my God, she says. Who says non-Jews did not convert to the true religion of the Israelites? Here we have an example. Ruth herself. Ruth, a Moabitess, believes in the God of the Israelites, believes in Yahweh, and she gets saved. Orpah sins because she goes back to her gods. She is still committed to the gods of the Moabites, which are really non-gods. But Ruth is saved because she's believed in the one and only true God, the God of the Israelites, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In the New Testament, a person is saved exactly the same way. It's this commitment to God. He becomes your God. It's a faith commitment, a trust. But we have an added dimension in the New Testament because there's further revelation. There's now his Son, Jesus Christ, who comes and dies on the cross and who's resurrected from the dead. And so now pardon comes to those who will believe in Jesus, believe that his death is sufficient to cover all their sins. So anyone can be saved as well in the New Testament, as it was in the Old Testament. So Ruth is a believer. And her level of commitment to Naomi and her expression of it is another example of hesed, loving loyalty, or loyal love. The emphasis, though, is on loyalty and a little less on love. But that's there as well, too. Ruth commits herself to being with Naomi no matter where Naomi goes, whether a temporary going or a permanent being with her people. The commitment extends from Naomi's lifetime to even after her lifetime, because she says she'll be buried where Naomi will be buried. Ruth's commitment is about being in the same location as Naomi. When Ruth leaves Moab, she will never return back unless Naomi goes back as well. That's the kind of commitment she has. And Ruth seals her commitment to Naomi with this oath. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you. Ruth is going to be a blessing to Naomi. And if she's not a blessing to Naomi, she's going to find herself cursed. That's what this oath means. It's not clear what the so means. Like when it says, may the Lord do so to me. So, what is it? Well, in our culture, we would do something like, may the Lord do this to me, right? As if death is coming, right? But obviously, Ruth can't be talking about death here when she says so, because she also says that, she says, and more also. So you've got the so, and you've got the more also. So perhaps, and I'm conjecturing here, Perhaps what Ruth's saying is, may the Lord make me barren, no children, if I'm not with you, and more also, which would include death. Perhaps that's what she's saying to Naomi. It certainly fits the context, right? Where it's all about a family line, right? And gaining a husband. Okay, these words given by Ruth are often used in marriage ceremonies today. The commitment Ruth is giving it's a lifetime one. And it sounds like something that one spouse would say to another spouse. I mean, it's such a strong commitment. It's like a lifetime commitment, and it's one of closeness, like she's not leaving. And this is a marriage type commitment that it sounds like. Additionally, in chapter 1, verse 14, when it says Ruth clung to her, that's the same Hebrew word that Moses uses in Genesis chapter 2 and verse 24 when he's talking about marriage, and he says, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and cling to his wife. There's our word, cling. Well, that's what Ruth is doing. She's clinging to Naomi. So what's happening here? I think what's happening is Ruth is sowing what she hopes to reap later on. She is committing herself to Naomi as a kinsman redeemer would. She is going to be Naomi's kinsman redeemer in the hopes that she reaps later on her own kinsman redeemer. I think that's what's going on here, and that's why the commitment is so high. I mean, who would commit themselves like this to any friend? Right? This is beyond friendship here. And so she cannot do it legally. She cannot officially or legally be Naomi's kinsman redeemer, true enough, but functionally and practically she sure can be. And it's interesting that Boaz later on says he knows the good that Ruth has done for Naomi and how she's left, her homeland and her family. He then invokes his own prayer blessing that the Lord would repay and reward her for her commitment and good deeds. Now, these deeds were the actual actions that Ruth does as a kinsman redeemer. And so she reaps a kinsman redeemer later on, namely Boaz, who becomes the reward and the repayment that he had prayed for Ruth. Amazing, eh? So that's what I think she's doing here. She's acting like a kinsman redeemer, hoping to reap later on a kinsman redeemer. And in the story, that kinsman redeemer ends up answering his own prayer of repaying and rewarding Ruth. So a question for us is, are we sowing righteousness? Are we putting ourselves in a place where God will bless us? Is holiness important to us? Is that what we really want to be? We want to be morally upright for God's sake. And so as we sow that, we will reap blessing from the Lord. Or are we sowing wickedness? Hosea the prophet spoke out against the northern kingdom of Israel. Now, Israel split up after the time of Solomon. When Solomon passes away, it splits up into the northern kingdom, which is called Israel, Ephraim, and the southern kingdom, which is called Judah. And Hosea is preaching to the northern kingdom. And he's telling them that they've been sowing wickedness. And so they had worshipped other gods that are really not gods. They had made alliances with other nations when the Lord had said, don't make alliances with the nations. Trust me only. And so God says to Israel, he says, for they sow the wind, and they shall reap the whirlwind. You sow evil, you will get evil back. If you sow wrong, you're going to reap wrongdoing and discipline. But if you sow righteousness, you will reap blessing. To a large extent, the world does function like this, but it's not without its exceptions. Like in Psalm 73, verse 3, the writer says, for I was envious of the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. Well, if they're wicked, you wouldn't expect them to prosper, right? For they have no pangs until death. Their bodies are fat and sleek. Notice how back then it was wonderful to be fat. Not so wonderful today. But that's just the different cultural expressions. They're not in trouble as others are. They're not stricken like the rest of mankind. Therefore, pride is their necklace. Violence covers them as a garment. So it's not the case that if you sow something, you're always going to reap in accordance with what you sowed. But in general, that is what happens in the world. So it's crucial that we as believers, we sow chesed, loving loyalty, or loyal love. That we have other people's interests ahead of ourselves. And so Naomi sees that Ruth is steadfast. She's not going to change her mind. And so she stops arguing with Ruth, and they continue on their way to Bethlehem.